is going to talk about the heritage benefits for people working in Northern Ireland.
You've had a Scot on Wales, now you're going to have a Scot in Northern Ireland. The only Scots who are not in Europe. But yeah, my name's Karen Latimer. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm an amateur and a volunteer, although I was trained by Alistair Rowan while Ewan was still in his cradle, probably. And when Nick threw up the picture of Pesner this morning, I was reminded of Alistair Rowan telling me when he was asked to write the buildings of Ireland as a compliment to the buildings of England, Pesner thought he'd better have a quick look at Ireland because he'd never been. And about 2 days after he arrived, Alistair got a postcard saying, "You poor man." And then about 2 days later, he got another one saying, "You poor, poor man." Not enough neoclassical buildings, but this is not what you will see when I show you Hearth. I've been involved with Hearth pretty well since the beginning. Chaired it for 15 years or something, and I'm still involved. When the gutter nutter phoned me up and said, "Please, would you give us a talk on people power?" I thought, she must have got the wrong number. But then I realised what she meant and what it was all about. And of course, Hearth is all about conservation for people, by people, and despite some of the people. So it was born, bred out of a good sire, the National Trust, and a frolicking filly, the Ulster Architectural Heritage Society. And the idea was to rescue the small buildings rather than the big buildings, ones that were very derelict, and the idea was to regenerate communities. What you have to understand, and one of my committee members is here today, and he says he still doesn't understand it, is that Hearth has two distinct arms. It was founded originally as a revolving fund in 1972. And it's another story and not for today, but I think we're going to be focusing on that again for a while for various reasons. But the idea was to restore buildings generally for resale, though we held on to some of them. And it's restored about 30 buildings. I have a brochure on Hearth here, which I'll leave if any of you want to have a look at. The point about the revolving fund is it can move quickly, which the other arm cannot, because it's much more bureaucratic, which is what's stifling it. The other arm is a housing association. And this was, the founder realised that this was an opportunity to get quicker funding, and it started in 1978. And the idea was to provide housing just like any new build housing association. It takes people off the same housing list and operates in exactly the same way, and unfortunately, as I say, has all the bureaucracy that goes with it. But the good thing is it accesses housing finance. So where there's a housing need, you can do a lot of good work. Just to quickly show you, that just gives you the idea of the various, the Housing Association in blue and the revolving fund in red. And we also do consultancy work for people like the National Trust, the Irish Landmark Trust, and other building preservation trusts. So all across Northern Ireland. That is, some of you may have known the late great Sir Charles Brett, Charlie Brett, and it was his brainchild. And he really modelled it on the Little Houses, National Trust for Scotland's Little Houses scheme in Fife. And he really wanted to do something practical. He was already involved with the Heritage Society and the National Trust, but he wanted something A, practical, and B, working on much smaller buildings. And I suppose the challenge that we were throwing out to the people working in housing in Northern Ireland was that social housing didn't always have to be big, large estates. It didn't always have to be new build. You could provide social housing in small villages and small areas in big cities. And the whole idea was that people would be proud of their buildings. One of the interesting things, we do a lot of surveys of our tenants. They don't pick us because we're historic. They're just on a list and they get offered the next one that comes up. But when we survey them, 60% of them were very positive and said they were really glad to be living in a historic building, and they were very pleased that little houses could be looked after with just as much care as all those big ones, which was nice. So let's look at the project, since that's really what you're here for. This was the very first project, Almshouses in Seaford, which is a very small village on the way down to the mountains of Mourne, if any of you know Northern Ireland. So sort of on the tourist route, especially now. And the Ford family, who owned the houses, were very keen. They were originally set up as almshouses for 6 old people, and there was a courthouse, but they lay derelict for a long time. And then as the property markets went up, people began, outsiders, began to be interested in buying them up. And the Fords were very keen that they go to local people. So Hearth took them on and turned the little almshouses, 2 into 1 house, and the courtyard into 2. And it's worked very well because we've now done other houses in the other street in Seaford. Moving then from little rural village to Belfast, this is Cliftonville Road, very handsome, a classical building by Thomas Jackson, the architect who worked in Bristol, which you can probably get the idea. And the thing about this that's nice is it was merchant housing originally, then it became a home for the blind. And this was a very difficult area in the Troubles. So the Home for the Blind couldn't cope with all the ruckus that was going on around them. So they moved elsewhere, the building lay derelict, it was offered a Hearth. We only take it really when nobody else wants it, so it's always a challenge. And we turned it into emergency housing for people who were being losing their homes through rioting. So it was a really good, not only was it an elegant restoration, but it was a really good social housing project. And as I say, what we always try to say is that if we can restore a building in an area that's very derelict and seems to be losing hope, then we can turn things around. That's what we try to do and aim to do. And of course, we've all said it 100 times today already, the big argument that restoration does make economic sense, but we still don't always win that argument. The other property, now that was housing for the people. Those were things we were doing to help people in difficult areas. This is really housing by the people. This again, right in the centre of Belfast, it was the people in the area were very keen that these houses be preserved. The Housing Executive, which was then the big housing body in Northern Ireland, said they would restore them, but they were so badly vandalised and so derelict that they, with all their millions of capital, decided they couldn't afford to do it. So they demolished them. Huge outcry. The Ulster Architectural Heritage Society, with the request from the local community, fought the planning application, and they were not demolished, passed a Hearth with no capital and no money at all. So how we were supposed to do it when the Housing Executive couldn't. But we did do it. We had to phase it because we had to get the money through the revolving fund. So within a week of getting it, we bought it and got going on it, but it was a very, very scary project. One of the nice things about Hamilton Street was we decided it was very much, as I say, the markets, and if it was an area that was really troubled, and we decided, right, let's get locals back into the area. So we did 2 things. The locals said they wanted a shop. They'd always had a shop in the area, so we turned one of the houses into a shop. And when we sold them, once they'd been restored under the revolving fund, we sold them at auction, and we said that locals could get a discount, and we got the local parish priest to be the judge of who genuinely was a local. And half the houses went back to local people, including one family who'd always lived there until they were moved out by the Housing Executive. So it was a really good scheme, but very scary at the time. And then also in Belfast, this little building was one individual really came to us, came to the Heritage Society, with whom Hearth works very closely. This was a cottage only on the outskirts of Belfast originally. Then later, in the sort of beginning, in the sort of 1900s, workers' cottages were built around, and then the whole area was demolished, was about to be demolished for complete renewal by the Housing Executive. But the locals came and said they really didn't want this little house to go. So we said, all right, we take it on, and we were a bit worried because there was a lot of vandalism, and we said to the guy who's our tenant and always has been, we're a bit concerned about vandalism. Alistair can do this accent, I can't, I'm afraid. But he said, don't worry, the boys have been told that if they touch the house, they'll get their kneecaps blew off them. So we knew it was safe. Local support. Another story of vandalism was Alexandra Park. This was a gate lodge in another, very close to the one I showed you, the Thomas Jackson neoclassic Cliftonville house. The park keepers came to us and said, we're a bit worried this house is, it's very badly vandalised and there's a lot of trouble in the park, what do you think? So we said, okay, we'll take it on. And it's the old story again, we took it on, we restored it. The tenant who took it over in 1996 or so is still the tenant today, has brought her family up in it, and she's had no trouble with vandalism since, once she was in and living in it. People don't vandalise houses that people are living in. Going down to Armagh, which is a very historic city, as I know some of you know, in Northern Ireland, this was an area of huge dereliction beside the Protestant cathedral in Armagh, called Whaley's Buildings. And again, the local community came to us, the Housing Executive were going to just wipe the whole area. and they said, oh, you can't possibly, some of the buildings were listed. This was another very tricky scheme in terms of money and funding, but highly successful. And one of the really nice things about this scheme was that when we had done our work, the housing executive then built a new build scheme right beside it, very beautifully detailed and very much in character, which they certainly wouldn't have done had we not done that. One of the big problems in Northern Ireland is thatched cottages. There used to be something like 30,000 thatched buildings in Northern Ireland, and they're now less than 300, maybe even less than 200 now. This is a Grade A listed building. It's our only Grade A listed building, despite all the big houses we have, or bigger. This came, I don't know if any of you knew Dick Oram. I don't know if he was known in this community, was he? Well, Dick was a conservation architect, and Dick came to Hearth and said to us that Mr. Curry, who lived in this cottage, had been told by the housing executive that he would be rehoused. Don't worry, they said, we'll build you a lovely new modern house. And he said, I don't want a lovely new modern house. I have lived in this all my life. I was born in this house. So Dick said, look, go and talk to Hearth. So what Hearth did is we bought it on condition that he would be the tenant for life. Now, he never, I think, realised we bought it. He thought he owned it until he died, but that didn't matter to us. And so what we did with that building, a lot of rethatching, so picking up on the thing about craft and traditional skills being an offshoot. Oh, sorry, you need to jump that one. The outer barns, we restored the outer barns as a modern kitchen. So we had a modern bathroom, modern kitchen, modern bedroom. But Mr. Curry, every day in life, would do his teeth and have his breakfast, put his clothes on and go down to the original Cruck cottage and light the fire and sit in there all day. The problem is, Mr. Curry is now sadly dead, and we cannot find anybody to take this building on. So it's a real problem. We've tried all sorts of things, folk singing events, the local museum, but it really needs somebody to live in it all the time, because otherwise you get the mice falling out the mud walls, and you know the story. So it's a real problem for us. So as I say, I think the point is, the Hearth's point is that vandals pick places that aren't cared for. Once you look after them and care for them, reclaim the areas, it generates pride, as other people have said today already. I want to move back now to Belfast, and this one really is despite the people, despite some people. College Square North is right in the centre of Belfast. It used to be the home of the professional classes. It was the home of Thompson, later Lord Kelvin. Very grand housing. It is now social housing, which pleases us. I mean, I think those of us who work with Hearth like to think that's what we are doing. But it was badly bombed during the Troubles and hugely badly vandalised. But now it's restored, and nice and tears. I may say, despite the people having bombed it in the first place, they are the most difficult tenants, I think Alistair would agree, of all the time that I was chair of Hearth. The only time I was ever threatened was by one of the tenants here when we tried to evict him for all sorts of things you do not want to know about. Or maybe you do, it's actually quite interesting. I'll tell you later over dinner. But one of the nice things, I never knew about gym shoes hanging out the door meant heroin is available here, but I now do. And thanks to Hearth doing the work, then the very wonderful Belfast Building Preservation Trust then restored the Christ Church over the road as a library and computer centre for the local school. So again, catalyst for action. Now one day Marcus Patton, who again I'm sure some of you know, the director of Hearth, who's directed Hearth ever since it started, and it's just truly wonderful. Marcus phoned me up one day and he said, in all this housing stuff, how would you like to manage a theatre? So I said, no thank you. And he said, oh, well, too bad, you're going to. So this is Portrush Town Hall. It was the subject, the local council wanted to demolish it. That's Marcus's drawing, by the way. Very, very wonderful. And if you know Marcus's work, very, very typical. Sort of faintly, your man, Lowry-esque. Anyway, the town council wanted to demolish the building. It went right up to the minister. Eventually, with the Heritage Society's help and Hearth's help, the listed building consent to demolish was not given, and so the council just turned around to Hearth and said, all right, you've been banging on about how you think this building is perfectly savable and it's just bad maintenance, which it was, so you can now restore it. So off we set on this new adventure to restore a theatre. We did a lot of public consultation. I mean, Heritage Lottery quite rightly expect you to, and rightly so. And we spent many happy hours up in Portrush talking to the dancers who wanted sloping floors, and the drama societies that wanted flat floors, and you know, it was very interesting. And we took off some of the 50s extensions and got to work on the building. The interior had been very badly. Do you like the colour scheme? It was anyway, we got to work on it. That was a lot of debate about that, had a lot of discussion with Robert McKinstry, the conservation architect, about the interiors. But eventually the theatre was restored and is now back as a very popular public facility in Portrush. And there it is. And the nice story about that is there's a railway station, a very attractive railway station just opposite, which was also very derelict, but it's now in the process of being restored as well. So, catalyst for action. We have also got a restaurant, not just housing. This is College Green House, right beside the university. It is actually revolving funded. It is private housing for various reasons. We have just bought this building. Am I allowed to say that, Alistair? It was a long lease before that. I'm not sure what's confidential, because I'm, having stepped down as chair, I'm not party to it all. But the interesting thing about this building, it has huge political connections, and the grandparents of Garrett Fitzgerald, who was a Taoiseach of the Republic of Ireland, his grandparents lived in the house, and his mother eloped out of the window. He always said he'd tell us when he found out what window it was, but he didn't know. And so Garrett, it was one of our biggest, highest profile openings, because our president at the time was Jennifer Jenkins, a widow of Roy Jenkins, and Jennifer and Garrett obviously knew each other from political days. Roy and Garrett were mates. So Jennifer and Garrett opened this building for us, so it was really quite a coup and great fun. We had real fun with them both. Yeah, that's the restaurant. If you're ever in Belfast, I can highly recommend that you go for we're going to have Marcus's retirement dinner in there. Now, the other, just sort of getting to the end, going back to the simpler housing. When I first moved to live in Northern Ireland, there were lots and lots of streets like this. And Alistair, I'm sure you remember, they were just 2 a penny. But now there are very few left. This is McMaster Street near the shipyards, near the Titanic, iconic American fancy building now sits, having demolished all the houses round about it. But these houses remained. What we found slightly irritating is we finally persuaded everybody that it's a conservation area, that we could restore them. We did a lot of knocking 2 houses into one, and creating very attractive houses, small but very attractive houses for social housing. And the tour buses from the Titanic used to come round, and they would show the street to the people on the bus. But when we went to the tourist board and said, how about a little help here, we could do with a little bit of funding to do some pilot funding on sustainability, not a bean did we get. It always made me feel very bitter, And back to your point, I think, James, about the architectural professions and the other bodies, not just looking at individual things, but looking at the whole context and the cityscape and everything. And I feel the tourist board in Belfast, which is suddenly on the tourist map and has become such a much better city than it was, should be looking at all of this as well. But it seems to be still very can't say it, in different compartments. This was the opening. We had quite a lot of debate about the murals, as they call it in Northern Ireland, the paramilitary, and we thought, no, this is part of the community, we're not going to just leave it alone and leave it there. This little house has been a great success. The 2 women who live in this one love it, and it's great. So this was the Lord Mayor, Sammy Wilson, who's at the opening, and local school children dressed up in Victorian clothes and played Victorian games, and they all danced around. And this is one of our residents with her snake, which I tried to avoid. Now, just to, not a snake person, not her, avoid her. So sustainability is another social, we're talking about for the people, by the people, and despite some of the people. And sustainability, we do try to be socially and environmentally responsible. That is one of our aims, as well as the aesthetics of it all. So just you all know this, that hardly need rehearse it, but the argument that we're always being told by the housing bodies in Northern Ireland that we're too expensive and it's much cheaper to do new build, and we kept trying to say, well, it depends how you cost it. And if you actually take into all the embodied energy, okay, they may be more energy efficient, but they've used a hell of a lot of energy to build them in the first place. So we try and make this argument. Now the building, well, so what we argue, obviously, as you all would, is reusing the old buildings, all the things we've said today already about retaining the local identity, keeping communities together, and using 3 minutes, right, fine, using local labour. So the one we thought we would try, this is the Ormeau Park house in the middle of one of the parks in Belfast. We tried to buy this from the council, it's completely derelict, and they said, no, they wouldn't. They thought they could sell it for a lot of money. Then they came back to us, and this is Chatham House rules, because they had a very, very difficult family who were causing a mayhem on the housing list, and they thought sticking them in the middle of a park was just the answer. So they finally gave it. But we thought, because it was in such a bad way, we thought, well, here's an opportunity to try to show that old buildings can be sustainable. That's the team outside the building. And so we used lots of eco measures, and we've used it as a pilot. Now, I'm not going to boast about it. There were a lot of problems, but I think we learned a lot from it. And if we were doing it again, I think we could do it better. But it was a good chance to start to use things like air source, heat pumps, etc. We found this old photograph of the building, so we thought for the opening we'd get the Penny Farthing Society to come and recreate the photo, which is great fun. And then they all raced around the park afterwards. But, so it's social housing. The family who caused all the problems are still there. They're still causing a lot of problems. But they've got the whole park and the park's visitors to cause problems with that. And our last project, this is at the end. This is very much despite the people of the title. This is the stables at Zion Mills in the north of Northern Ireland, designed by an English architect called Unsworth, because the Herdman family, whose estate village, or whose mill village it was, were mates, or I think even related. Zion Hill Stables, the Hearth, when I first joined the committee, it's been on our agenda for years and years and years, and we kept trying to say this building needs to be saved. It's hugely important to the townscape, it's hugely important to the local community, but nothing happened, and it gradually got worse and worse, mainly because the owner, who is sitting in this bulldozer, bulldozing his building down as fast as he can, was determined not to do anything to save it. His own house was another building we tried to buy. We offered him £1 million for it, and he turned it down. He's just a very, very difficult, nasty person. Don't sue me. So there he is. So it was we kept trying to say, get a compulsory purchase order. Eventually, the Department of the Environment did have a compulsory purchase order. We did, at long last, but still with endless problems from the owner, manage to restore it. And that's it, the two facades. At the opening, which was my last public appearance as chair, I thought, right, here is my chance. Say it all now, Karen. So I thought about it long and hard, and I did this speech about, how great it was, because the minister was there, that the department had compulsory purchased it, but what a pity they'd taken so long to do it, and what a pity they hadn't seen how successful it was and done it again, and all of that stuff. And I took a deep breath and I sat down, and the minister turned to me and said, that was a very good speech, which meant he hadn't listened to one word I had said.